Welcome to the holiday Herbal Hors d'oeuvres presented by Beaver Lake Nature Center. Today you're going to learn a little bit more about culinary herbs and a couple recipes. The herbs you use in your cooking have long histories. Not only are they tasty, but they also play an important part in a lot of cultures through time. So first we'll go over some of the most commonly used herbs, and then we'll get to the cooking. First, I've got a group of herbs here that are very familiar. Basil, sage, rosemary, oregano, peppermint, spearmint, and thyme. You've probably used these herbs many times in your cooking, but you might not have realized they all belong to the same family, the mint family. Spearmint is also called garden mint. It's native to Europe. It's used in a variety of dishes, including Middle Eastern cooking, often added to teas, sometimes cooked in grape leaves, dosas in Greek cooking, bulgur, tahini. Spearmint is often used as a refreshing drink as well. Its relative, peppermint, is actually a hybrid between watermint and spearmint. Mints commonly grow in wetter places along streams, wet areas, and they have a refreshing odor because they contain menthol. Menthus is the group. Square stems, as many mints do, very easily recognizable, and of course, used commonly in dishes, even savory dishes. Another mint used a lot is basil. Basil originated in the Mediterranean region, often used in Italian cuisine, as you know, pestos, and today our recipe does include basil. Very popular, very good dried, and of course, excellent fresh. Sage. This time of year, Thanksgiving, Christmas holidays, New Year's feasts, we often cook up dishes with poultry seasonings, perhaps, blends of sage, rosemary, thyme, parsley. Sage is another mint. Again, Eurasia, Mediterranean region is its origin. There's many varieties of sage. As I should have said, many varieties of basil as well. Used in a lot of different dishes. You can even take the leaves and do a light tempura batter and eat the whole leaf if you're willing, because it has a very strong taste. Next, a plant that's somewhat woody with needle-like leaves, rosemary. A very strong aromatic herb, used again with poultry seasonings, stuffings, a variety of soups. Again, the dried rosemary is pretty strong, as well as the fresh rosemary, chopped up finely, adds quite a flavor to dishes. Next, oregano. Oregano, as gardeners are familiar with, like any other mint, spreads profusely if planted. Some try to plant it in a container, but it often hops the container and through rhizomes or stretching branches, spreads throughout the garden. This oregano popped up in my garden, even though I thought I had moved and eradicated it. So I'll use it in my cooking. A wonderful herb, oregano. Finally, the last representative in this mint family is thyme. Of course, everyone knows the Simon and Garfunkel song. Those herbs were traditionally, in medieval times, very important herbs in cooking for royalty. Parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme. Thyme is a similar texture, flavor as rosemary, but a little lighter. So thyme, again, as a dried herb, is pretty darned good. So those are the ones in the mint family. Next, we'll discuss other herbs that are in other groups. The last 4 herbs I'm going to talk about aren't related, but they're used commonly in culinary dishes. Dill, obviously, is used for pickling. Dill pickles are among the favorites in this country especially, used with salmon and other fish, and of course in dips. Cilantro, also known as coriander. In fact, coriander is the main plant that cilantro comes from. Coriander as a spice are the ground up seeds, dried and used as a spice. Cilantro, in fact, means coriander in Spanish. Some people think it tastes like dish soap. Those folks have a gene that makes the aldehydes taste like soap or some pungent flavor, whereas other people enjoy the flavor and add it often to dishes, especially Mexican and other Spanish foods. Next, we have parsley. Broadleaf, curly, different varieties. This is curly parsley, still growing well outside. In fact, it stays green for a long time, even under the snow. So if you feel like digging through the deep snow, you can have fresh parsley in the wintertime. Great as a side to spice up a dish or as a garnish. Parsley. Finally, chives. Chives, of course, are related to onions and garlic, and the green stems, chopped up finely, add a lot to various dishes and, again, used as a garnish. So chives can be dried very easily and used in that manner, or kept fresh. This herb, chives, and others can be grown indoors during the wintertime. All you need is a bright source of light, either a nice window or a grow light, and you can have fresh chives and other herbs all winter long. So those are some of the herbs that we'll be using today, and then we'll get on in a moment with 2 recipes that are great for the holidays. The first recipe that we'll use today that incorporates different herbs is called the tortilla roll-ups with salsa. The salsa you can make separately or buy, but this is a great hors d'oeuvre for Christmas. When you're done, you end up with a Christmas tree of delicious tortilla roll-ups. I made this last year for my family and I loved it, and it's got a lot of possibilities for different herbs. So, we'll start with what you'll need. I chose these spinach and pesto wraps. Again, we already have some basil in the wraps, but you just essentially need some kind of a green tortilla or sandwich wrap. Cherry tomatoes. These I just picked up from my garden. They're just towards the end. I had them in my refrigerator. They're for the little decorations that'll go on at the end. Rainbow peppers. You'll see later that the yellow pepper will cut into a star for the top of the tree. A chili pepper you can have or leave out if you don't like hot foods. This will add to the colors inside the wrap, as will the black olives and the pimentos. Green onions are also put into the wraps, and when they're done, you'll have a cornucopia of different colors. Cream cheese will form the base of the roll-up or the tortilla wrap, and we'll get to that later. You'll need 2 8-ounce containers. You can use different herbs. This recipe calls for using ranch dressing mix, which is various herbs and spices, but I choose to use fresh herbs. I chose to use some parsley today, some dill, cilantro, which will go with the salsa that you dip it in at the end if you'd like, and chives, which will add some nice color to the roll-up. All right, so you get your ingredients together, and we'll go on to the next step. So the tortilla roll-up recipe can be found on inspiredbycharm.com. So now, put the cream cheese in a nice big metal bowl if you have it, or any kind of bowl to let it soften. While it's softening, you can prepare the ingredients that you'll mix together. The green onions. I'm going to use a yellow pepper and a red pepper as well, chopped finely to add different colors. Then, of course, black olives can be minced finely and added, and the pimento will add a darker red to the mixture. The herbs not only will add the green sparkles and the different colors to the cream cheese mixture, but of course they'll add their signature tastes: the cilantro, dill, parsley, and chives. So, while the cream cheese is softening, go ahead and start preparing the vegetable ingredients. After the cream cheese was softened at room temperature, and during that period I chopped up the various herbs, pimento, red pepper, and black olives, mixed them thoroughly. Now, with a spatula, I will spread the mixture on 4 tortilla wraps. The recipe calls for 12-inch tortillas. I have 10-inch spinach wraps, so I might try 5. So the mixture could be divided into 5 parts or 4. And then you roll up each, leaving a little bit on the edge, about a 1/2 inch, where you don't put any of the cream cheese mixture. After you roll them, I'll place them on this plate, cover them with some plastic wrap, and then refrigerate for about 2 hours so they firm up for the last stage of cutting them. Now, about a fifth of the mixture was spread evenly over the tortilla. I left the little edge open, so when you roll it, it doesn't come out. So roll it rather tightly, and we'll put it on this plate. You can see the nice colors of the various vegetables and herbs, reds and greens, just in time for the holidays. So now the wraps are nicely rolled up with the cream cheese mixture inside. And of course the cream cheese mixture was quite soft, so we can mix in the herbs and the other vegetables. So now I'm going to put it in the refrigerator, covering it with some plastic wrap so it firms up, so it'll be easier to cut for the next step. So after 2 hours in the refrigerator, the tortilla roll-ups firmed up a bit. Then I used a serrated knife to cut them into sections, then arrange them in a pyramidal fashion. The end result looks like a Christmas tree. The cherry tomatoes, of course, are reminiscent of Christmas lights or ornaments. And then at the very top, cut a star shape out of a yellow pepper. So now you can enjoy the wraps, the tortilla roll-ups with salsa, or they're tasty just plain, packed full of dill and other herbs. A beautiful holiday hors d'oeuvre. The next hors d'oeuvre that I'll be preparing is a puff pastry garlic and herb pinwheel. You can get this from bitesizedkitchen.com. It's a very simple recipe, but with elegant results. The things you'll need are puff pastry dough, a stick of butter, several cloves of garlic, Parmesan cheese. I chose the pre-grated cheese. You can get a fresh block, breadcrumbs, and a selection of your favorite herbs. Today I'm going to use rosemary, chives, and oregano. Both the chives and oregano were from my own garden. So first, you want to melt the butter and saute the garlic. While that's sauteing lightly, you can mince up the herbs that you'll use. Like I said, you can use your favorite herbs. You can add basil, parsley, and other herbs that go with this garlicky, buttery, delicious hors d'oeuvre. When the garlic just starts becoming aromatic, remove it from the burner, set it aside, and then add your herbs. And then you'll be ready for the next step. Now we're ready to spread the herb mixture on the pastry dough and roll it up. We melted the butter and put in the different herbs after the garlic was sauteed a bit. This is cooled a little bit, so it might be easier to spread. You can use a brush. I'll use a spatula. I rolled the pastry dough out onto a piece of parchment paper and also prepared a baking sheet with parchment paper where I'll put the rolled cut sections to bake. So preheat the oven to 375, get that ready. So we'll spread the herb mixture on both sides of this pastry sheet and then sprinkle breadcrumbs and Parmesan cheese and then roll it up. After rolling up the herb mixture in the pastry dough, I put it in the freezer for about 20 minutes to firm up the dough to make it easier to cut. Now I cut each about 3/4 of an inch thick, place them on a baking sheet with parchment paper. Now I'm going to put them in the oven for about 12 to 14 minutes, 375, until they're golden brown and puffed up. After baking for 12 minutes, the pinwheels are nice and brown. When they come out of the oven, you can brush on the remaining butter herb mixture. Serve them warm or at room temperature. So the hors d'oeuvres or appetizers are ready for the holiday.